The view's in a meltdown and I am all here for it, but for what this time? Well, Donald Trump's pick for Border Czar, Tom Homan, has sent a ripple of fear across the Democratic mainstream media establishment because it's the strongest message yet that Trump means business when it comes to tackling illegal immigration. I can't help but to poke holes into this segment and expose the lies, so take a look before I tell you more about it.
You realize that when he says, yes, families can be deported together, what he is saying is that U.S. citizens can be deported. What he is saying is, if the parent is undocumented and they have U.S. citizen children or U.S. citizen spouse, or and you don't want to separate them, then let's deport the U.S. citizens. Look, Donald Trump won the electoral vote. He won. He's going to win the House. He won the Senate. For all effects and purposes, he's got the Supreme Court. They've given him immunity. This is what the country voted for. This is, a lot of people thought that when he talked about mass deportations, he wasn't being serious. I don't know how many times he had to say it for people to realize he was being serious. Well, if you thought he wasn't being serious, the appointment of Tom Homan today as Border Czar, and he will be in charge of a mass deportation program, the largest the country has ever seen, they say. And now Stephen Miller, as Deputy Chief of Staff, should let you know that he was absolutely serious. And when you talk about mass deportations, people think, oh, it's just going to be the criminals. There's not enough criminals, aliens in the federal prison system for it to be mass deportations. What it means is grandmothers. What it means is brothers and aunts. What it means is abuelos y abuelas. It means dreamers. It means family members. It means your colleagues. It means your friends. It means people who are part of the society. And look, America, those of you who voted for Trump, this is what you wanted. This is what you voted for. You screwed around and you're about to find out.
Did I hear that correctly? Does Ana Navarro not realize that it's impossible to deport a U.S. citizen? Because let's not forget, we've already seen the duo of Donald Trump and Tom Homan working on the border crisis before, when Tom was the acting director for ICE in 2017. And while there's no denying that he's got an iron fist on illegal immigration, the statistics are what tell you the full story. In that 1 year that we saw Tom Homan in action, according to reports from ICE itself, it, quote, conducted 143,470 overall administrative arrests, which is the highest number of administrative arrests over the past 3 fiscal years. Of these arrests, 92% had a criminal conviction in pending criminal charge, were an ICE fugitive, or were processed with a reinstated final order. So even for someone as progressive and open on border policy as Ana might be, it's impossible to argue that criminal elements trying to use the border crisis need to be apprehended. By the way, subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell because there is a lot more content in the pipeline that you cannot miss. Now, if anyone's looking for someone to blame for family separations, the record 1.2 million illegal immigrants that Barack Obama deported in his first 3 years, also likely familial connections on both sides of the southern border. But it's interesting that a president like Obama, who was dubbed at the time as, quote, deporter-in-chief, doesn't even get a fraction of the heat for it in mainstream left-wing circles.
We get the government that we vote for as a country, and the majority of the country apparently voted for this. And, I think it's really loud and clear that what he said, he meant. And if you look at Homan's background, he was a contributor to Project 2025. He was a police officer, which I find really rich because he was appointed by a convicted felon. He also was a United States Border Patrol agent, a special agent with the former Immigration and Naturalization Service. So this is his thing. This is his background. But what I would like to point out is that there is no correlation between undocumented people and a rise in crime. That's statistically accurate. Immigrants, including undocumented immigrants, are less likely to commit crimes in the United States. So this notion somehow that it's about national security, I think is just false. I think this notion really is about otherization of people. I think it's about a culture war. And I'm sad for the country, quite frankly.
Yes, but that's not the argument, Sonny. She mentioned naturalization into the United States, which is, of course, a legal way to become a U.S. citizen over time. But if you take a page from Obama's playbook, one of the ways in which Barack Obama was able to avoid much of the criticism for mass deportations was by focusing on individuals that entered the U.S. illegally and stayed for only a few weeks or months, as opposed to years or decades, which obviously leads to stronger argument for naturalization. But the difference between then and now is that the last 4 years have seen the greatest influx of illegal immigrants in the country in a long time. Now, there's some contested figures on both sides ranging from a few million up to 11 million, but let's take the number that's reported by the House Committee on Oversight and Accountability, which says that there are at least 1.7 million getaways under the Biden administration that we cannot trace or document. The longer that the US government waits to deport those people that escaped the legal pathway, the more difficult it's going to be to deport them or force them to go through the legal process for asylum, and yet you'll never hear the left-wing media at least recognize this massive problem at the border and that it exists, and that the Biden administration's failure on it have made Americans swing right to Donald Trump. Sarah Haynes here was a rare but brief exception to that.
There is a problem at the border, and there's been a problem for decades and decades, and every administration has come through here and no one has fixed it. It ballooned in this last administration, and that's what the people voted on, a referendum on that. Because right now, one thing I've never understood, and I actually think we'll wait to see how this looks, but either we have laws at the border or we don't. We're asking people to get in line to come into this country while incentivizing people not waiting in the line. Like, we've seen things where sanctuary cities like California and Illinois, it's kind of like get to the country, like kick the can. If you get to base, though, you're going to be fine. You also have Tim Walz signed into legislation in Minnesota that allowed undocumented immigrants to receive free in-state tuition. All of these are lovely in spirit, but there are people that can't pay for food for their own families. In New York, they were giving the $500 meal cards, and obviously we want to help someone for the humane interest, but there's a lifeboat here. And I think the rage about the border was also people here that are maybe insecure, homeless at times, making ends meet, and they don't have they can't send their kid to college. That's the outrage of what I saw the voters say.
Not just that, there has been a deliberate conflation in the media about the difference between asylum and immigration. A person from the South American continent likely crosses several countries before they end up north to the US border, and that means the more countries they cross, the more they change definitionally from asylum seekers to migrants. When you want asylum to escape immediate oppression, you stop at the nearest safe point instead of crossing several more borders. In other words, migration in the US is more led by pull factors than push factors. That's why the existence of the Remain in Mexico policy drastically reduced the number of people seeking and applying for asylum in the US, because they knew it wasn't possible anymore to get inside the US premises anymore under the pretext of awaiting their asylum application. And maybe that's why The View fears someone like Tom Homan taking over as the border czar. He can come across as too cold and calculated on the border issue, but someone like him wouldn't have been needed if the Biden administration had done its job. Watch this incredible clip making the rounds of Tom Homan's exchange with AOC, and it's clear that a lot of people are buying his tough approach.
The recommendation of the many that you recommended family separation.
I recommended zero tolerance.
Which includes family separation.
The same as is with every U.S. citizen parent gets arrested when they're with a child.
Zero tolerance was interpreted as the policy that separated children from their
If I get arrested for DUI and I have a young child in the car, I'm going to be separated. When I was a police officer in New York and I arrested a father for domestic violence, I separated that father from his
Holman,
family.
with all due respect, legal asylees are not charged with any crime.
When you're into the country illegally, it's violation 8 United States Code 1325.
Seeking asylum is legal.
If you want to seek asylum and go through the port of entry, do it the legal way. The Attorney General of the United States has made that clear.
Remember, he's been doing this for nearly 40 years at this point, and coming from 4 years of Kamala Harris as in charge of handling the border crises, the American people have given a resounding vote in favor of a much tougher policy on illegal immigration. With that public mandate, all we can wait and hope for is that Donald Trump is able to deliver on those promises with as little human cost as possible. But let me know in the comments how you view this new appointment by Donald Trump, and share this video across your social media to get a feel for what other people are thinking as well.